Okay. Are you
All
ready?
right,
You look ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Desa Daniel. I am Division 45 student representative. I am so excited about this conversation today. I have known Dr. Palmer since my very first APA conference, where he gave me a ton of advice, a ton of information. And then later on in my doctoral career, as I transitioned from a master's student, again, gave me some fantastic information. Um, and it's just been an amazing pleasure. Last time I saw you, you were just kind of starting your podcast and kind of talked to me about, I was like, tell me everything. And you're like, well, let's give it a minute. Um, and now I get to have you on here. Really, I just wanted to talk to you because I think you're fantastic and really get you answering some questions, but also more involved with other students who haven't seen you before. So Dr. Palmer is a Black psychologist and mentee to Dr. John White or Joseph White. Joe,
Minty, you said Minty, right?
yes, mentee.
Yes.
Mentee to
So,
the great Joe White. And you have a clinical practice, you have a podcast, your Instagram has been fire the whole month of March or February and leading into March. But really just a huge advocate of some issues going on in the Black community, a panelist almost every year that I've been to APA and a presenter. And I'm just really excited to have you here.
thank you.
All right.
Um,
Did I forget anything? Probably.
well, I'm also an assistant professor in the counseling department at St. Mary's College of California in Moraga.
Awesome. All right. So I really wanted to start with one, how did you get started?
You mean like all the way like as a student and stuff, or?
Well,
Um,
really, we know you were a student at one point, or hopefully, but really the transition, because I know you to be awesome, but I feel like it's been a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of years for you to get to where you are right now. And so, how did you kind of transition in that process and move into what you're doing today?
well, you- so can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Um, Well, I mean, so I think it did start as from undergrad. So I went to UC Irvine for my undergraduate education. I got a degree in anthropology and African American studies, and then afterward, went and spoke to uh, Doctor the late Dr. Joseph White and Dr. Thomas Parham, and told them both that I'd like to be a psychologist. And I know I don't have the degree. What can I do here? Uh, and so they kind of set me on a path to start to move forward in terms of embarking on a career in psychology, which, by the way, I didn't know what that really meant at the time. It's like you're a student and you've kind of flail around. You have some of the information, you take some of the classes, you kind of have this feeling that you want to talk to people and you want to help people, and you want to do stuff in your community. But the odds and ends, the real work of being a psychologist is different than I think what I thought it was. Really, it was me seeing Dr. Parham one day. I was walking on the campus at UC Irvine, and there's a ring road there, a walkway that goes around the entire campus.
Oh.
And internally to the campus, on the inside of that ring road is parking where only the big shots get to park. And so I'm walking, and I probably had some headphones in, and I see this. This is back a few years when before gold got kind of played out in cars. So this was like when Lexus came out with its champagne gold Lexus, right? And I see this gold Lexus drive in, park in the big shot spot. It says Parham on the plates.
Wow.
And then Dr. Thomas Parham kind of comes out of the car and just kind of strolls into the counseling center. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, it's just, if you ever seen Dr. Parham move, that brother, he just got like that kind of style to him, right? And so I'm, 19, 20 years old, and I see this brother go across, and I was just like, okay, I want to do that. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but I want to do that, and I think you get inspired by a lot of different reasons. You get inspired by, small things and big things. I was also a peer advisor in our student academic advancement services, which was like the TRIO support services.
Yeah.
So I was working with other peers and helping folks to kind of matriculate through college. And I thought that was, being able to be a helper in that way would be a useful thing. So you fast forward, I was able to get into a master's program at Long Beach State, and I did that in research psychology. And then where I met Dr. Michael Connor, who's also a Joe White mentee. And he chaired my thesis, and he helped me to learn how to be an activist as a student. The department at Long Beach State isn't the most, or it wasn't the most welcoming space for Black students, especially ones who wanted to work on cultural factors and do research that was about our community. But it doesn't seem like that on the front, it doesn't seem like that on the surface, And so I fell into one of those traps that a lot of grad students fall into, where you have someone who tells you that they really want to work with you and they really are interested in your work and all that stuff. And then you find out that they're really actually not that interested, and they want to change what you're doing, and you become this kind of pawn. And so Dr. Connor, he actually was able to help me untangle all that, and eventually he became my chair, and we were able to work out me getting through there and being successful.
Yeah.
From there, I went to the SIU Carbondale, Southern Illinois University Carbondale, and I learned how to be a real researcher and a clinician, and had a lot of support there. So that's like the beginning, and through all that time being connected in the community, trying to find and build community, learning the reality of what psychology is, because if you understand that there's 13-14% of Black people in this country,
yeah,
but we're still only 3 or 4% in the entire community of psychology, that tells you what psychology is for Black folks.
Yeah.
As a discipline, as a career. It's something like APA and all the constituents need to work really hard to make better, so that we can kind of come into the field. So in terms of early career, which I think is where you were first trying to go to, I got a lot of tools from, as a graduate student, having to make community and build things and kind of hustle. So as a grad student, I had a lot of different jobs, and some of them were like personal businesses. For a certain amount of time, I was taking photos and going to the local clubs, and I had my little SLR camera and a printer, and I was, put together a business. And I think that was actually a really important thing for me, because in grad programs, you don't learn, in psychology grad programs, you don't learn how to run a business.
Yeah.
That's not a class that you take. But if you have some experience with entrepreneurship, and then you bring in all the skills that you gain as a psychologist, you can do something with that.
Yeah.
My personal take on all of it is that I wanted to be able to expand what I do in order to help bring to make psychology a more open space for people of color. And I wanted to do it in a way that was ethical and was bringing sound information. There are people out there who will put their degree out and then they'll just say whatever. And I try very hard to remain psychologist first, entrepreneur second. And so that means that whenever I'm working with my co-host Dr. Lamisha Hill, to put together a podcast, or whenever I'm posting on my public postings and whatnot, I'm thinking, is this ethical? Is this supporting Black psychology? Is this pushing forward a healing, healthful message? And if it's not, I ain't trying to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's real easy. It's real easy to decide to just make money or just to get notoriety or just to, talk smack out there, and forget the fact that you have a huge amount of responsibility based on the fact that the community gives you credence, or they give you a trust based on the fact that you have this degree and, possibly have that license.
So something that really stood out to me is you're not just talking about like your, in the sense, legacy of like really like where you started, where your roots are from, but like how you got to now. And I'm wondering, what is one thing that you would have told yourself when you were a grad student in like that Long Beach state, but also as you moved to Carbondale?
I would have said, be yourself more. I think one of the things that I came across when I was in both programs was this pressure to be what other people thought I was, so to either be, the hyper African centered Black man, or to be the muted, nice Black boy, black guy in the space, and trying to kind of navigate in between and code switching all the time. And instead, I would have liked to, and I think by the end of my time at Carbondale, I was able to really kind of just be me. And I think that comes with, confidence. It comes with building kind of successes and building relationships where it becomes safe. You can't go into grad school and just do and say whatever you want because you're being evaluated. And people could say no, people can tell you like, we don't want you here. So I think you have to balance the idea of maybe putting away the soapbox, as one of my mentors said, and building a professional identity that's going to make you, marketable in the future. There's so many cookie cutter people out there. If you don't do something that's just you and make yourself stand out, then why would I hire you when I'm looking at all these other yous and then there's this person who's special, So you got to find what makes you special, and you got to own that, and you got to start building a reputation around that.
How do you can you even suggest ways for us to find what makes us special now? And like really, because what you said a lot today is not just finding it, but then being consistent with it and like really having it play out into what people know you for.
Well, I think I think all you gotta do is, ask your mom or your dad or your grandma or your abuelo or whoever, and they'll tell you what's special about you. People see it before you see it, and I think it's a matter of kind of being quiet and listening and thinking about what you really love, what you really like, and being honest with yourself. When you're in class, think about the things that, I like to talk to my students about this. Like, what about the reading pissed you off? That will tell you a lot about who you are. And that's where your passion is, And so if you come in as a person of color and you might think my research needs to be about people of color, but really what gets on your nerves is professional ethics stuff. And people of color come in, but it's the people who are unethical that bother you. So maybe you need to start talking and thinking about ethics more, because that's what's going to keep you working at night when you're tired, and you don't feel like doing anything else. But this has to be done right. Otherwise, the wrong information goes out. And that's what matters to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think one of the ways that I came to that is through, and I know you asked this question, I think, because you wanted me to bring this up. There's these three questions, these three critical questions that Frantz Fanon puts out as a way to kind of understand your own identity and keep yourself mentally healthy. He says, who am I? Am I who I say I am? Am I all that I ought to be? Um, and if you run yourself through these questions, you're able to come to some truth with yourself. Um, so who am I is just, straight up, what's your identity? What are all the identities? What are the intersections that you think of when you think about salience and you and yourself and what you're going to be in the world? Simple things are, I'm a brother, and I'm a husband, and I'm a dog owner, and I'm a psychologist, and I'm a militant fan of Black Panther, and all that. But then the second question is a question of verification. Are you really what you say you are? Am I who I say I am? So, you get into it and maybe you say I'm a good student. Okay, so are you who you say you are? Well, I am a good student. I get good grades. Could you get better grades? Are you doing everything you're supposed to be doing? I don't know. Maybe I'm an okay student. So you can either say I'm an okay student and be okay with that, or you can do the things to become a better student or excellent student, which might mean that you have to cut other things out, and it clarifies things. So you're making a choice there. Am I going to be the thing that I am, or am I going to be the thing that I say I am? Right. Yeah. And so if you work yourself through there and you go around until you find out that you are all the things that you say you are, you can move to the third question, which is, am I all that I ought to be? Right. So maybe you're a straight A student. Maybe you're doing everything you're supposed to do, but is that all you ought to be? Well, maybe you want to be a fellow somewhere. Maybe you want to be a Rhodes Scholar. Maybe you want to do something that's bigger than just being, a straight A student. And then you have to move towards that, and you go back to the other questions, and you just kind of keep doing that throughout your life. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And it's definitely, I remember, like I said earlier, but like for our listeners, it was in August 2015 where we really had this conversation, because I was like, I'm lost. I'm not sure if I want to be doing this. I'm not sure if I want to be in this, like, this hustle, this mental health hustle, and be a part of this. And it just stood so prominently in how I also started to look at myself, because it wasn't just those three things, but what you said to me especially was, what is your professional identity in the next 20 years, and figuring out who you are by preserving your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, what? Like, I was like, I'm not old enough yet, or I haven't got there yet. And that challenge really shifted my mind into not just what the struggle is right now as a grad student or as an ECP or as a tenure professor, but what do I want to see in the future? And am I really living that today so I can get there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that something that I don't know, that I think we lose it as we become graduate students, because we're taught differently. We're put into this, we're cast in this lower role sometimes, and we forget that walking into grad school, you're already a professional. Walking into grad school, you've already paid a bunch of dues, and you've already done a bunch of different things to show your worth, and your value. And one of the things they told me when I got into the doc program, or when I was going around doing interviews, they'll tell you at a lot of the places that, we already know if you're here at the interview, we know that you're ready for a doctoral education. The question is this the right place for you? Mm-hmm. And the thing they don't tell you is that once you're ready for a doc education, pretty much it's just about not quitting. Yeah. It's no longer about like testing your aptitude or testing whether you're good enough. It's really about, do you have enough grit to just keep pushing so that you can actuate into who you really are. You walk in the door, as soon as you get in a doc program, you're Dr. So-and-so, as long as you keep pushing. Yeah. And so when you're doing that, you need to be thinking about, like, what's the next steps? What are you doing all this for? Is it for, this piece of paper, which I think is important. I don't like when people just call it a piece of paper. And it's a very important, it's $100 and something $1,000 piece of paper that you got going, right? Yeah. Whether you paid it or somebody else paid it. But, what are you going to do with that? What's your life going to look like? Because you're about to sacrifice a huge amount of time percentage wise in your life as far as it's gone so far, 4 to 5 years, that could be like 20%. You know what I mean? Like depending on how old you are. What are you going to do with that? And like understand that no one's going to put you or place you in anything. You know, like you have to make that decision. Are you going to be a person who focuses on working with kids? Are you going to be a person who wants to work in specific parts of the city? Are you going to, go and be that doctor who goes and travels? You know, like there's always that one or two people who you're like, man, where is that cat at? It's in Ethiopia right now. It's like, how'd they get to Ethiopia? It's like, but they had a plan to get there. That didn't happen overnight. They said, I'm gonna do all these things to make sure I can get travel into my life. And I think that you have to start where you are, or actually where you were when we were talking before. You have to like make your vita work for that. What's the research you're gonna do? What are the practicums you're gonna take? What kind of professors are you gonna work with? And even just going to conferences. Which conferences do you attend? Because you start making peers, and your peers will pull you along if you let them. So if you start going to international conferences, then suddenly international conferences are normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I think about
that. So when you're saying that, I was really thinking a lot about, so did you as a grad student see like this social media hype in your like toolbox? Did you see starting a podcast, or were those things that you thought that you could do over time? Like, how did you make those decisions?
So I was reading an article recently, they talk about generations, and they have the Gen X people and the millennials. Like what has come about is a new term called Zennials. Mm-hmm. And it's the people who are right in between. And I'm literally in the middle of that pack, and so what that means is that I remember what it was to not have cell phones. I remember having pagers where you had to flip the pager upside down to read the secret message someone will put in there, or just literally not being able to talk to folks because you don't know where they are, so pre-internet, all that. But the technology boom of the internet and social media happened while I was in my early adulthood, right? So college was literally the summer before I went to college. When I was in Summer Bridge, people were using IRC chats. I don't even know if you know what that is, but it's the precursor to all the chat stuff that you're doing now. So text messages, all that. So we learned email and all the different pieces as it was created. So I basically live on that wave. Everything new, I'm learning as it go. It wasn't there. I remember when it wasn't there. I remember when it was sci-fi. Like, this is Star Trek, right? This is straight up Star. Like,
yes.
Like folks who were born in the late '90s or whatever, or in the mid '90s, y'all don't understand. This is magic. And so all of that stuff is like, it's fun. It's fun to mess with. It's fun to play with. And I think that you learn kind of, a lot of us who took advantage of it become, casual experts, if it makes sense. So I've been using social media since social media was social media.
Yeah.
And trying to stay up on it has been interesting. So moving from Black Planet to MySpace to Facebook, which I know means I'm hella old, because y'all young folks don't mess with Facebook. I'm not with y'all on Snapchat. I can't get that far. It's just I can't get there. But Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, pretty comfortable there. And then like learning how to use it professionally has been kind of a journey. Like, how do you take this thing that just is an engine of telling people's business and whatnot, right? Which generally psychologists are afraid of. You get like a year or two past me, or even people who are my peers, they don't want to mess with social media because we're supposed to be private. The problem is that no one's private anymore. That doesn't really exist. It's an illusion. And so what since I was, in college, I was always on Facebook and always using that stuff, and I'd see how you could use it to advertise and things like that. And then I started watching as peers. So like Dr. Earl Turner and who else is out there? Dr. Nikisha Harris, right? Both of them kind of went hardcore on their social media, and so they're like role models slash like little bit of rivalry in my head. I don't say it to them, but I'm just like, ooh, Earl, put that, man, I gotta get, and it becomes this kind of fun, collegial kind of, I want to do something as cool as what they're doing. And hopefully if I do something that's cool enough that one of them says, oh, that was cool, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really on track, And the idea is that we can use this social media in order to get this message out in a way that has been limited in the past, because generally Black psychologists aren't put in the front of things. Historically, Dr. Joseph L. White, he would be a pioneer on this in terms of he put out that seminal article in Ebony magazine towards Black psychology. And I think that has influenced my ideas about how to kind of get past the ivory tower and speak directly to folks. And I think that the podcast came out of that because it was just like I would start listening to them. I used to listen to Snap Judgment. I listened to this zombie podcast called We're Alive, which was like this really cool audio drama thing. And I started to realize that this is the way people are learning and listening and experiencing the world. It's like this new thing. And then I decided to go, because I'm used to having to learn how to do technology. I went and I was like, how do we do this? And then I found out all I need is a mic and a computer. That's all I need. So, I and a brand and a lot of other stuff as you kind of work it out. But like I got with Dr. Hill, and we started to put together the idea of like how to flesh out what naming it was and is, and scraping together equipment, going on Craigslist and whatnot to get my mic and all that stuff. And I think it came down to like what was our voice going to be, and that got chosen for us when all those brothers started getting shot and videotaped that summer. So because we were like, is it going to be psychology? It's going to have psychology, but is it going to be like about Blackness? I don't know, And then it just had to be, So yeah, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're not. It's so interesting to me how it's not just the like, let's see this idea, let's see what we can get going, things like that, but then also being flexible enough to really incorporate your environment. So like what's happening in the media right now, what are my colleagues doing, what are other people in the field doing, and really like meeting that expectation, but this still really keeping it grounded and down to the earth so that anyone can consume it and really understand what it is. And I think that that little piece is also just so unique, because I think it's like you said, we forget as students kind of like what it's like to be on that middle ground with everyone around you. As we transition to ECP or into other realms, we're like, oh, now we're supposed to like hold this space differently, but then you're still who you are at your core.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you always have to come back to who you are. I mean, if you let people, they'll make you into something that you're not. They'll hold you in, they'll the whole idea of struggling against like the weight that people will put on you. People, I really like was it DJ Khaled? He talks about they don't want you to. For a little while when that was big, that would go through my head a lot. They don't want you to do this. They don't want you to have a podcast. They don't want you to have a voice. They don't want you to do the things that feed you, because if you do that, you're not going to fit a mold, and I don't think that we as Black psychologists, as people of color, as marginalized groups, we can't fit molds, because the mold that they put for us, it will continue the oppression, So I think that you have to be an intersectional feminist. You have to be a gay pride advocate. You got to be an affirming. You got to do all the things that come from your identity and the people that you're going to try to take care of and be allies with. And if it works to help the community, you know, you got to figure out how to make it work in a way that's going to push forward the agenda that you have, as well as, you know, make sure that you're whole, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe, you know, make a few people angry who need to get they feelings hurt, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also so interesting to me that you're also not doing this by yourself. So you've talked a lot about the mentors you've had, but also the colleagues you've had. And so I'm wondering, as you've been through this process, like how have you gotten colleagues that are kind of like on that same hustle, or like Dr. Hill be like, yeah, let's do a podcast. Like, how are you making those relationships?
I think you know, you just have to be who you are again. You know, it's like, if I'm gonna be moving around and hustling, then other people who kind of have a hustle too, they see that. You know, I'm trying not to say game recognize game, but like that's literally what happens. You know, you see people and people stick out. You end up having conversations. You go to conferences. You end up in the same panels and in the same workshops, and you having the same arguments. And you find that the people who are passionate about the same stuff you're passionate about will kind of come out. And so, in order for you to find that support crew around you, you have to be like as fully yourself as possible. Otherwise, they won't see you.
Yeah.
You know, you just saw the Oscars, and Key and Peele had that relationship piece where, like, I don't know if you've seen like the memes where like this is like real friendship, and like folks are talking about, I wish I had a friend like that. And like my response to that is, you have to be that friend. You know, like you get that by doing that. And I had really great mentors. I have really great mentors because I was connected to people who were mentored by them. And so they kind of owed passing that forward. And then I retain mentors because I follow mentorship. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you have to be a little bit humble about that and say, well, if I asked you to help me, why would I not follow your advice? You know, I might not do it exactly, but I'm going to basically bring the product back. If you told me to go talk to this person, I'm going to talk to him, you know, and then we'll see what happens. If you tell me to write this thing, I'm going to write it and we'll see what happens. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I know better. If I knew better, why am I calling you? You know? And I think all of that is about being a responsible member of your community. Like, you don't say stuff that's not going to get done. You don't do things to the detriment of other people. You know, you don't take credit where it's not yours. And that's a big thing. I'm just put it out there. Like, people get real onerous about that. You don't want to be that person who steps out front and everyone sees you and knows you didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
You know? And there are people who do that, and you'll encounter that in graduate school in like basic stuff like group work. I personally believe that the humble people are the ones who are going to always will out, because your work will start to speak for you. You know, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to, you know, put a big shining light on yourself, because the work is going to go out. Now, that's not to say, though, you shouldn't advocate for yourself, because Black and brown people and women don't do that, and then we don't get paid right and stuff like that. So we still need to advocate just at least as much as a mediocre white dude, you know. But it's real, you know. But like, you got to know, like, you don't have to be the center of attention. You know, attention will go to the place where it's supposed to go. You just have to be tight enough.
I think it's so powerful what you said, not just about like the process of finding mentors, but then the importance of wanting to be mentored, and being open to mentorship. Because I feel like that's probably the hardest thing that I've seen, like even for myself and other colleagues, is really seeking out that mentorship and then realizing that the advice you got or the mentorship you got is sometimes really hard to swallow, or feeling like, oh, this is something I really should do, if it doesn't always fit right away.
Yeah, it's, you know, I don't think that you blindly follow. You know, you got to have agency and autonomy, and you have to make your own decisions. But you can't make decisions based on I'm grown. That statement in your head where you're just pushing away because you're pushing away. It's, and we all do that. We all have that thing where it's just like, I can do it, and it's just, but if you can kind of humble yourself and say like, okay, this person said, call this person up, right? There's obviously something going on there that would help me. I should at least explore this. I can make a decision on the back end, right? As long as I still have those options open, I can decide whether I want to take the help or not at the end of it. But if I don't explore everything, if I don't check out my options, if I don't, apply to, for instance, one of the big things that comes up, I think that people get conflicted on is applications to grad schools or into internships and things like that. I remember when I applied for grad school, and that costs money and stuff, and you trying to figure out how you're gonna scrape together this extra $50 for whatever. I think I walked into a meeting with Dr. Parham, and he was like, "How many programs are you applying to?" And I was like, "Well, I found some that look like they're really cool, and I got these people I want to work with. I found 7 programs. I feel good about that." He was like, "All right, bro, all right. Why don't you go ahead and add 6, 7 more, and then come back and talk to me?" And I'm just like, but how long it took me to get those 7, and what he ended up telling me is like, you want to have the key to mental health. There's a lot of keys to mental health, but the key to mental health is having choices and options.
Yeah.
And on the back end, you can choose. Once you get a bunch of yeses, you can say which ones you don't want to go to. But if you try to put all your stuff in one bucket, then you might get a no and you don't got no options.
Yeah.
And I could say like, I got accepted to a lot of places, and that was like wonderful to be able to look at all these little, these letters, and over someone saying, yeah, you can come here. Yeah, come for an interview. And even if it's not your top place, it's a place. It's a place you could go. And it also allows you to figure out, oh, well, this place wasn't my top place maybe, but they want to give me a gang of money.
Yeah.
So maybe it's going to be my top place, So, options also allow you to have, these other opportunities that you might not have opened up for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when we're thinking about mentoring, we should be thinking about what kind of options our mentors are helping us to open up for ourselves. The other side is also judging the success of the mentor. Mm. Has what the mentor told you worked, right? So if they keep telling you to do stuff, you do it and it works out for you, then that's telling you everything you need to know about the mentor. If the person who's calling themselves a mentor isn't really helping, and it's because you're following what they say and it's not working out, then you have to question and wonder and maybe talk to them some more. But most likely, I hate to put it this way, but most likely, if the mentor is engaged with you and doing stuff with you and stuff ain't working out, you need to look inwardly and say, what am I not following up on? What am I not doing? They told me to write this letter. Did I put all the time I was supposed to put? Am I who I say I am? Am I a good mentee, or am I just saying I'm a good mentee? And if you are honest with yourself and you're honest with them and you keep communication going, then I think good things come.
Mm. And for you, I'm wondering, how did you transition, and I know that you're still a mentee in a lot of different ways, but like, how did you transition to offering mentorship?
I think as soon as I became a mentee, I started offering mentorship.
Wow.
Like the way that Dr. White treats you as a mentee, he kind of trains you to be a mentor as he's talking to you. Like, for instance, if you walk into a room with him, he didn't talk about himself. I would never hear Dr. White talking about himself. He would walk you into a room. Hey, I got to use his voice because it's in my heart, right?
Yeah.
So we walk into a room. I remember at APA in Washington, D.C. in 2015, I was applying for doctoral programs. And 2015, no, 2005.
I was like,
no, sorry, 2005. and I was applying to doctoral programs in counseling psychology. And so it was the end of the conference, and I was leaving, and I was tired. And you don't have to laugh at me. People don't ever believe this, but I'm actually a pretty big introvert. I just have a big battery at this point that I've developed. But at that time, it was gone. I was ready to be done. I wanted to go home. I wanted to get out of DC and get back to where I was at in Long Beach and all that stuff. And I see Dr. White, and he's coming down this escalator, and I'm going up. And he's like, Bedford, where are you going? Come around here. Right? And so I'm about to leave. Good to see you, doctor. Come around here, boy. And so I just go down. I go with him. He kind of takes me by the elbow, right? And he walks me into this room that I just came out of that no one had talked to me in, right? And it's this room full of the most famous counseling psychologists there are, like Punky Hepner and like Kathleen Chawales and like all these, there's all these people with all these names, Kevin Coakley, all these people just doing, and he takes me by the arm and he walks me through this room, and he basically goes up to all these different people and he's just like, hey there. And I remember this particularly because he was talking to Punky Hepner. He's like, hey, Punky, this is Bedford Palmer, the future of Black psychology. Here you go, right here. I just want to meet you. And then he would move me away from them and take me to the next person, then the next person, the next person. And he wouldn't even let me talk to him, right? And he wouldn't talk about himself. And it was all about, and what I realized by the time we had gone through this entire room is that he was basically letting everyone know that I was his guy and that they should look and make sure, and that's not going to get you through a door that you're not supposed to get through, but it's going to open up an opportunity because when they see you, they're going to say, okay, let me read this closely. So every time what I started to do, because every time I was hanging out with him, that would happen. When I was walking with an undergrad student or a younger graduate student in a place where they weren't known and they didn't know people, I would immediately start introducing them. And I realized it later, but I wouldn't introduce or talk about myself at all. I would spend the whole time talking about the student. And that was kind of the beginning of learning how to be a mentor. And I'm not saying that I know how to be a great mentor at this point now. I'm trying, I'm struggling. I have a couple people who I work with who are really great people. But it's not like a thing that you do once you've established yourself. It's a thing that you continue to do. Dr. White always says if you're on the freedom train, which is the official name for what his hundreds of mentees, thousands of, anyway, to be on the freedom train, the admission is that you can ride for free, but you got to give tickets to 5 other people.
Yeah.
And so that 5, it's never 5. It's as many as you can before you go to sleep. You know what I mean? So that's kind of it. And you just have to be diligent and dedicated to the people who you say you're going to help and do what you can, because there's only so much you can do at certain points. Right now you can do a bunch for some students, right? But you're not going to be able to do what a seasoned, late career professional could, but you can do stuff as an early career professional that you are right now.
Yeah. It's so funny to me that you shared a story like that, because I had a similar experience with you and Dr. Parham as well. As I remember, I was like just trying to get out. Like I was like, I'm just trying to go home. We've been at this convention all day. Like I'm just trying to get out of here. I remember you being like, "Oh, are you going to the Division 17 social?" And I was like, "No, like I think I'm okay." And they're like, "What? Like, why wouldn't you go?" And I was just like, well, you're like, well, you don't have a reason, so I guess you're going. And I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going. And I think that's really when I finally met Kevin Coakley in person, and I just met so many people, and I was just like, this was really, really impactful. And I'm really glad I went, even though in that first moment being like, I really can't talk to one more person, or I just want to go lay down. And realizing that it's almost relationships are formed like now long distance with social media or email and things like that, but really feeling like the relationships I have been solidified in conversations that have happened at convention or at conferences.
Yeah, I agree. there's nothing like when you meet somebody in person and you get to talk to them and you get to see. I think one of the biggest things about going to conventions as a student is you get to see professionals interacting in a professional setting, but collegially with other folks. And you don't see that with your professors because you're always in some sort of meeting or in some sort of class or some, you might see them individually when they're advising you, but you don't get to see them with their peers, because even when you have colleagues that you work with, those ain't the people you came up with. Right. And so it's like funny because I think one of the coolest early memories for me was also interacting with Kevin Coakley. I won't not tell any business and stuff, but we there was a convention, APA was in New Orleans. And so, I'm with my little crew of first year graduate students, right? And we're trying to do our New Orleans thing. And then we see Kevin Coakley and his crew of early career professionals doing their thing. And then if you look closely, you start seeing the and you start seeing that these are just people, They have fun, they go out and do stuff. They're basically just older versions of you, more experienced versions of you. And if that's the case, then you can be that.
Yeah.
And that actually blew my mind. Me thinking I could be a Dr. Parham is crazy to me. Me thinking I could be a Dr. White is like me trying to talk about being like Martin Luther King or something crazy, But someone closer, like Kevin Coakley or Esmenario Bassi or, who else? Who else are some of those folks? I feel like I should be like dropping people. I don't want to like someone to see this and be like, why don't you talk about me? Anita Tawari.
Thank you for watching.
Right.
It's exciting.
But you got to be able to see yourself and stuff. You got to see yourself and see something that's the next step. And I think that's powerful, and you get that from conferences. And people who don't go to conferences, they don't know about it, and you can tell. And it's interesting because I've had some of my colleagues who are my peer group go to conferences for the first time with me and be like, what the heck have I been missing? And it's like, yeah, this is the cool part this is one of the really cool, fun things that we can do in this job that's really hard and really serious and really important all the time,
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so on those lines, especially like being mindful of how expensive conferences can be, what are just like a few staple conferences or a few like opportunities that just come to mind for you that you would suggest for students to go to?
Well, I think you got to think about where you want to present. So, we talked about the fun social stuff, but like the point of going to a conference is practice your presentation skills and to also for a student and to also start to build a name for yourself. And it's not that you're going to put a poster up and there's going to be flashing lights and everyone's going to come and find you. But if you have your poster up, then you put that poster on the Vita, right? And you do that research and you build on that program of research, and you end up having more and more stuff on your Vita, and suddenly your work becomes more clear. And when someone looks at you, they say, oh, I see that this person presents at these places, and I see that this person presents on these topics, and they look at it and they're interested in these things. I want to work with that person, and the best way to even think about it is like as a grad student, before you got into grad school, if someone told you to, you would have looked at the faculty that you might work with, right? And you look at their Vita and you start to make opinions. And so you can tell you've already done that work where you've like started to judge and say, okay, I want to see what this person is doing, and I want to work with this person. That never stops. Yeah. So in terms of specific ones, if you're the ones that I go to, so I'll put it like this, the ones that I go to pretty regularly, I go to APA, I go to ABSci, I go to the Multicultural Summit, and then some local, I'm in California, so I'll sometimes go to California Psych Association, but you have to kind of decide where you sit with these places, because not all spaces are welcoming and not all spaces are healthful for you. So some places you're going to go and get fed, and some places you're going to go and kind of do the work. ABSci for me as a Black person Black psychologists. It was a nice place to get fed. It was actually really pivotal to me kind of matriculating and having support and finding friends and all that stuff. APA is a place where I went to kind of make a name in certain ways, because you have to have your community face, and you also have to have your face outside, because if you can't, and this is philosophical, I mean, different people believe different things, but I think you have to be able to engage with the larger society in order to make sure that you take care of the people that you care about.
Yeah.
You know, in Dr. Parham and in Dr. Parham, White, Ojama, and Obasi, Psychology of Blacks, they talk about kind of self-actuating through your racial identity and being able to move through spaces holding your own identity as as strong and as intact, but still being able to relate to the outside world and do other things. And so when I walk through APA, I know I'm in a foreign land, but you got to go and trade. You know, you got to go out there, you got to do stuff, because if I didn't go to APA, I wouldn't have met you.
True.
You know, so I mean, it's like there's a give and take to it. So I would say so those are the places I go, and part of the reasons I go to ABSci is for getting fed, but it's also where I can present on like more radical multicultural stuff. Multicultural Summit is a place where you can also get a lot of information about multicultural counseling and psychology and social justice work. I think you go to APA because everyone comes there generally. And then you look for specific places where your own identity is going to get fed. So if you're into neuropsych, you got to go to a neuropsych conference. If you're into child clinical, you got to find a child clinical. If you're an art therapy person, you got to find art therapy, right? If you're a woman, WPA, you need to go to WPA. You know, it's just, otherwise you ain't never going to know what it's like to be a WPA. So, you know, that's the way I would look at it. In terms of the money though, don't pay for your own conference. The way that you will get people to pay for your conference is that you have to present something, which means you have to be doing work all year, right? Yeah. To get your presentations together, get your research together so that you can go present at different spaces. When you do that, you can always ask for money. Someone's going to give you money.
Yeah.
If you go to your department chair, you go to your fellowship office, you go to the research office on campus, you talk to you try to apply for grants and fellowships from the actual conference. So like there's all these things you got to pay attention and get on those listservs and do that. The last thing I'll say on that, at least for this moment, if you do things when you build yourself up and you make yourself into something that's valuable to your department, then your department will support you more. So if you can like become a representative, if you can make it so that like, you know, you're on a board, you're doing something like what you're doing and stuff, like departments will see that as a feather in their cap and they will support you in doing that. And it is a quid pro quo. It is transactional, but so is everything else in the world. And I promise you the white students are doing it. So, you know, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, so, and there's nothing wrong with it. So just do it, you know, be in the know too.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to also point out, like, that is followed by connecting yourself with mentors who are going to tell you those things. I remember when I saw you in DC, and I don't even know where we're going. My mom was with me, and I remember you telling me, you know, make sure you're also doing the research. Make sure you're also doing the other stuff you need for like the job you want. Not just the like advocacy and volunteering or the podcast, making sure that your basket in a sense is filled with a lot of different things that you do really well, not just like one great thing and then a few little smaller things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you have to be well-rounded. And, you know, that's another thing I would have told myself earlier on. If I could go talk to myself earlier, I would have said, go get into the research harder, you know, get more pubs out. The more publications you do, the better you get at doing it. And that is prerequisite for you to be trying to do education in academia. And one of the things that a lot of young psychologists don't understand is that it doesn't have to be a choice between academia and practice.
Yeah.
You can do both at the same time, and most of us actually do both at the same time in one proportion or another. Um, I watched my mentors, and a lot of them did academia. Like academia was their first job,
Mm.
and then they would consult and they would see clients as a way to augment the academic lifestyle. And to get into academia, you have to have publications and you have to do these things. But once you're in, you have a flexibility that, I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's hard work. You have a lot of people you're responsible for. You have all these students that you got to take care of, which is kind of wonderful if you like to teach. Um, if you have a big mouth, then you'll do good in the professor job, right? But you also have time to go and spend a few hours seeing clients, or to build something that's like a consultation practice, or to
Yeah.
write books, or to do things that are going to kind of enhance who you are and provide service to the community, but at the same time kind of give you variety in life. One of the things that is amazing about getting a doctoral education is that you don't have to do one thing. You can do a lot of different stuff, and you can usually do it well. And if you hold yourself to certain standards, really people will want that. Everyone will cheer you on and want you to do it, because if they're connected to you, they get some of that shine too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
St. Mary's is cool with me doing naming it, because one of the professors is doing a podcast, and who else is doing that? Even though I say crazy stuff on there. Not really.
Something that stood out to me that you said, and even when you're talking about it right now, is that ABSI, like going to ABSI conference helps feed you. And I'm really wondering, how do you balance it all? Like, you're doing so many things, it seems like, from and really like, right, an outside view, but how do you balance the research, the clinical work, the podcast, all of it, self-care? Like, are you, like, you look good? Are you taking care of yourself? Like,
I don't know. uh, I don't. I think you wake up the next day and you say, "Oh, I'm still here. Look at this." You have to. You make boundaries. You have to go into that basic old school time management stuff, like my Google Calendar, my iCalendar, and all that stuff. It's regimented. Like, I got this meeting here. I got you're on my calendar. The prep for it's on my calendar. The time with my wife is on my calendar. The time for walking the dog is on the calendar. I think you have to first and foremost manage your time, and just put those things in there. Put your meal time. Know when you're going to go to bed. Do those things. When are you going to get to watch your science fiction? Because I love science fiction. Or your Scandal. Maybe if you're Olivia Pope and you need your Shonda night, then you need to put your Shonda night in there, because you're going to watch it anyway.
yeah,
Right?
that's
So you
true.
can be like, I'm going to study from 7 to 10 on Thursday and lie to yourself. Or you can put Shondaland in there and put the studying somewhere else where it's actually going to get done. Um, I think you take on what you can, and then you got to start saying no to things.
Yeah.
But that's really hard, and a lot of people struggle with it. And people who are around you tend to just keep asking for more. So you really have to work on the boundaries piece. Naming it's been on hiatus for, like, we missed all of Black History Month, which I just realized. But school started, so like the first 2 weeks of February, or the first 3 weeks of February, is like prepping for the first week of school, and then the second and third week of school. I really just could not do it that time, and I think we're gonna record it again this weekend. But that's because things have calmed down, and I have a higher responsibility to my students and to the university than I do to this podcast that I'm doing, even though I love it, right? And the podcast will sustain itself if I let go of it for a while, whereas I cannot let go of what's happening with my students or with my clients, because my clients go all the time. There's no vacation there. So it's also about prioritizing and being honest about your priorities, and and making cuts where you have to make them. I also, there's things that I don't do because I want to make sure I spend time with family. So all my friends know it's real hard to holler at me during the week, you know? And it's kind of hard to holler at me on the weekend too, because like when it comes down to it, my partner, she's busy all the time. I'm busy all the time. So I love you like a play cousin, but you ain't my wife. So I ain't going out tonight, you know, and it's
Yeah,
just what it is,
absolutely.
you know? So, you know, it's a mix of things. I think that you just kind of build it up. I think what I'll put out there is one of the reasons you're getting so beat up as a grad student, to all the grad students who are listening, and they start ramping up and giving you more and more stuff, is because when you finish, you're going to have to work at that same level for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so you get used to it after that, like that third year, you know, first year you get in and you're, you know, acclimating and, you know, dealing with just being there. Second year, they hit you with that workload. And third and fourth year, they really just keep the workload up, you know, until you do some slightly different stuff. It's going to be the same. You know, it's just instead of having to make it to this class, you got to make it to this meeting. Instead of writing this paper because the professor asked you to, you're writing it because you want to put something in Psychology Today or in, you know, psych discourse or something, you know, and you still got to juggle. But you can, and you show it, and you've done it, so just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, that was powerful. That was really, really good. Especially when you talked about not just like balancing, but prioritizing and how you really need to focus on different things and like be present during that versus lying to yourself that you're not gonna watch TV when you know you are. Or and I just thought that was something even I struggle with. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because especially as people kind of transition into spring break, into midterms, and as summer coming, I think that is really important for all of us to remember. I do want to be mindful of your time because I know I said it would only be an hour, but where can we find you next? What are you doing next? What do you have going on? Where should we look out for you?
Um, I don't know, same old places right now. So if you're interested in listening to the podcast, then you can find us at namingitpodcast.com. That's our website, namingitpodcast.com, or you can look for us at Naming It at Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me. My little Twitter call sign is at DRBF Palmer, at Dr. BF Palmer. And that's the same for Instagram. And I also have that in Facebook if you're going to go to Facebook. I'm fairly certain we're going to record a podcast this weekend, so there'll be something out on Monday. And you know, you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. We're housed at Blog Talk Radio. Let's see. I have a column on Psychology Today, and so if you look at Psychology Today and search for Bedford Palmer, or you look for Who We Ought to Be, which is the name of the blog, then you might find me there. I also have stuff on medium.com under DRBF Palmer. And the next presentation, I'm going to do a presentation at California Psychological Association in April. There's going to be a town hall meeting where I'm going to speak about multiculturalism and social justice. And a really cool, it's really cool. Me and Dr. Hill, me and Lamisha, we got invited to be keynote speakers for the Best in Practice Award.
Wow.
Or the Best in Practice address at the Division 17 Society of Counseling Psychology at APA in San Francisco. So we're going to do an address together. I don't know what that looks like, doing a dual address, but we'll work it out.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about naming it and how we built that. And so those are places you can find us and find me. Or, you know, you can enroll at St. Mary's and, like, you know, get your counseling degree if you're undergrad, and we can talk about that.
Hello. Yeah, I will definitely put all the links in the description for this. And then if it's okay with you, I'll add in the Psychology Today article as well. And I'm just so grateful. I know that your schedule is so busy and you're doing all the things at times. And I just really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to meet with us and to talk to us. But also just 100% keeping it real, and just being really humble and true to yourself and allowing us to do the same thing.
Well, it's I appreciate what you're saying, but I would you asked me to do this. It's humbling. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to do. Um, I would have cleared schedule time. I would do what I need to do if you asked me to do this, and I really appreciate you for giving me this opportunity to talk to folks, and thanks for the folks who are listening. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will see you for sure in San Francisco. And then, um, yeah, we'll just keep up to date with you. And then, in a year when you are doing a plenary address at APA Chicago, we'll make sure we record that one as well so I can put it up here.
Right. You are so kind, and maybe you can speak something into being.
I
But
thought I just did.
you,
Chicago, 2019.
yeah, I heard you. I heard you. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do that together.
I'm
Yeah.
down. I'm 100% down.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us and for being here. And yeah, this should be up hopefully by the end of next weekend, and we'll make sure we get it out so people can hear the wisdom, especially around mentorship, but more importantly about around prioritizing your future, what you want it to look like.
Well, thank you again. This was fun. This is a nice way to spend the Friday afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.